Today's video is simply entitled Sales Closing for Beginners. Maybe you're selling from home, maybe you've started your own business or new to sales and you haven't got a clue what closing is. Well, if that's you, then this is definitely the video for you. Just before we start, if you are new to the channel, let me introduce myself. My name's Colin, co-founder of Just Go Sell, author and sales coach. And if you want some great tips, some great advice and a solid foundation to build on, then please hit the subscribe button and also the bell button so you never miss another video when I publish them. So let's dive straight into this one. The reason I called it sales closing for beginners and not closing for beginners is because you are very experienced in closing. I guarantee you are closing every single day. In fact, you do it that much, you don't even realize you're doing it. For example, have you ever said to someone, would you like tea or coffee? Would you like juice or water? Would you like to meet tomorrow morning or Wednesday afternoon? What you're intending to do when you ask these questions is gain a commitment or an agreement from the person that you're speaking to the choice of options that you've actually given them. Once they've made the choice, you can agree on it and then you can move on in life. This video is called Sales Closing for Beginners, and what we're going to do is we are going to take that concept and move it into the sales arena. So let's start at the beginning. Where does the word sales closing actually come from? Where does it originate from? Well, there's many theories on this, but the one I really like relates to real estate, in specific, closing in escrow. As we know, there are many conditions that need to be met before a real estate transaction can close. So what happens is you've got the buyer and the seller, and we have someone called an agent of escrow or an independent company that makes sure that this is fair to absolutely everyone and things close correctly. So what the escrow agent will do is they will retain the documentation and they'll retain the money until all those boxes have been ticked or all the criteria have been met in order for the transaction to close. And once that last box has been ticked, then the documents go to one person and the money goes to the other person. I really like this because it really relates to the sales process, because it's fair to say that when we meet a potential new client, they will actually have a criteria or boxes that need ticking before they'll actually make a positive purchase decision. And us as salespeople, if we're trying to sell an idea or if we're trying to sell a product or a service, it's super important that we tick these boxes or make sure that this criteria is met before we can expect to hear a yes when we actually ask them to buy. So how do we actually do this? Well, if we imagine the sales process is actually a journey, at the start of the journey is when we meet our potential prospects, and the very end of the journey is when we actually ask them to buy. So first and foremost, before we even start talking about our product or our service, we have to understand our client. We have to know where they're actually coming from. We need to know what's important to them, what their challenges are, what their wants are, what their needs are. We need to know what we're working with, because our product or service has to provide a solution. It has to be something they can think, that is absolutely perfect, I'm going to buy it. So before we even start talking about our product or service, we have to find this information out, because we have to have information on which we can close on. So the first thing we need to do is we need to ask our clients some open questions. Now, for those that watched some of these videos before, you'll know that an open question normally starts with who, what, where, why, and when. The reason these words are used is because it makes our clients elaborate. They can't just answer with a yes or a no. They have to explain. They have to give us information. So this is the first thing we need to do. We need to ask a bunch of open questions to our clients to gain information, to understand their wants, their needs, their challenges. We need to know where they're coming from. Now, once we actually have that information, then we can start the journey on the sales process, where we can start explaining the features, the advantages, and the benefits of our product. And when we do actually mention a benefit that we realize is directly a solution to one of the challenges we discovered earlier, then we pause and we make a closing question. And it could go something like, so based on what I've just shared with you so far, would you say that this benefit is actually a great solution to the challenge you mentioned to me earlier? That question is a closed question. They can only answer with a yes or a no. And you need a yes. Because if you get a yes, you have checked a box to one of their criteria. Anything other than a yes, consider a no. Before you can move on along the journey in the sales process, you need to get that box ticked. So you need to respond and find out why that box has not been ticked with the benefit that you've just explained. And you could say something like, okay, that's absolutely fine. Can I ask, what would it take for that benefit to be the perfect solution for that particular challenge you mentioned to me earlier? This is the way you go forward. You walk along the sales process with your client, and every time that you mention a benefit of your product or service, which is a direct solution to one of the challenges that you heard earlier, you make that closing question to make sure that box is ticked. So along the route, all the journey of the sales process, you are ticking boxes, crossing off the criteria that you discovered earlier with their challenges, their wants and their needs, until you come to the very end where you are about to ask them to buy. What you have to ensure is that every single box has been ticked. And in saying that, we go back to what I mentioned at the beginning, that you have an agreement or a commitment that each box has been ticked. And the way to ensure that every single box has been ticked is to simply ask your client. So you could say something like, so apart from the money, is there anything else that would stop you buying this today? This is giving your client a final opportunity to say, hey, you've missed that box, you've missed that box, you've missed that box. It gives you an opportunity to make sure once and for all that all the criteria has been ticked and checked off. Because the only thing you want your client focused on is at the very end of the sales presentation is the money. It simply comes down to the money. If you have done that and got to that situation, you have closed correctly. There are many different closing techniques in sales. And if you head over to my website, justgosell.com, especially to the Ultimate Sales Professional course, if you enroll to that, you will see a heap of videos related to closing. This particular subject today was sales closing for beginners. It was an overview of what closing is all about. It is gaining small commitments and small agreements from your client to ensure that your product or service is fulfilling or satisfying or giving a solution to their challenges, their needs, and their wants. I really hope that you're enjoying these videos, and please, once again, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button, and also leave me some comments. Until the next time, see you soon.